welcome to Wealth Manager, where we help make your money work for you. On the show today, what's in store for the insurance sector from Budget 2015? Sanjeev Bajaj, MD, Bajaj Capital joins us. Indian banks are coming of age. Launch banking services on the Twitter and Facebook platforms. Deepak Sharma of Kotak Mahindra Bank joins us. And we decode the Birla Sun Life Manufacturing Equity Fund with Shrikant Meenakshi of FundsIndia.com. Before we begin, here's what made news this week. Get ready to shell out more if you want to buy a home in the Mumbai suburbs. After granting 0.33 Additional Floor Space Index or FSI in 2011, the Maharashtra government has now proposed to charge builders more for this FSI. This will lead to higher redevelopment costs, squeezing margins and forcing builders to hike prices. This proposal comes on the back of a hike in the ready reckoner rates, which has already contributed to an increase in costs for the buyer. On the back of strong inflows in both equity and liquid funds, assets under management of mutual funds went up by 12%, close to the 12 lakh crore mark in January 2015. Liquid funds saw inflows of 85,800 crores, becoming the biggest contributors to the AUMs. That's not all. A marked increase in retail participation led to 4,06,000 folios getting added in January. That's the highest rise since 2008. Diversification is the key to wealth management. That's the advice coming in from Rick Carler, financial planning expert and president of Carler Financial Group in US, which manages a $210 million portfolio. He also discouraged Indian investors from concentrating investments in real estate and gold.
The most common mistake that I see people making is getting out of the markets when things look bad. Nothing can overcome poor behavior. And in fact, there's studies done by Dalbar that show that poor behavior or timing markets can cost a person up to 50% of the return over a long period of time. Make sure that your portfolios are diversified, that they're not over-concentrated in any one area, like perhaps real estate or gold.
One of the most keenly watched agendas of Budget 2015 is the introduction of the insurance bill to ratify the ordinance. Minister of State for Finance, Jayant Sinha, categorically told Bloomberg TV India that the insurance bill will get passed this budget session.
Our expectation is that when it comes to some of the very important legislation that's pending right now, particularly with insurance, mining and coal, that we should be able to get it passed in the budget session of Parliament.
But what are the elements of the bill that impact you as a policyholder? And will the insurance industry get its separate tax exemption limit? To discuss that and more, Sanjeev Bajaj, MD, Bajaj Capital joins us. Thanks, Sanjeev, very much for joining us on the show. My first question to you, of course, is the insurance ordinance being ratified is probably one of the most awaited and key aspect for the sector. Although all the amendments are in force in the form of the ordinance, many foreign players are still waiting for the bill to be passed before increasing their FDI stake.
These are substantially large amount of monies. If you look at an average capital of a life insurer, I think it will be in the range of between 1,500 to 2,000 crores. So when we are talking about a 500 crore type of an investment per foreign partner to increase their share, so it's a substantial amount of investment in the current global situation. So obviously, but a lot of work has already started happening. People are assuming that this is done and through. So they are now working on the groundwork formalities. But yes, actual checks will only come once the bill gets passed, so that they are 100% sure. Nobody wants to put such a large amount of money at stake.
The bill also allows for reinsurers to set up branches in India. Companies like Lloyd's are in fact waiting for the bill to be passed before entering. But how will this really change things for the Indian reinsurance market?
See, this will actually make Indian market much more dynamic. Right now, GIC is the only reinsurer which is officially present in the country, and they have a certain set of expertise. They are doing certain types of risk. With what happens with the Lloyd's and other markets coming in, the competency of many more types of risk and many more types of underwriters who are ready to take different types of risk, which a GIC may not be willing to undertake. So the depth of the insurance markets and the type of covers that are available will definitely increase. So on the general insurance side, we'll see many more types of new products, like things like credit insurance, we are hopeful will come in. And on the life insurance, I think the market is going to get more competitive, and there is going to be, probably, hopefully it should result in lower rates.
Another really important change from a policyholder perspective is that no policy can get rejected after 3 years now versus 5 years earlier.
This landmark period of 3 years will actually be very helpful for the consumer, that he knows, okay, I have gone through 3 years, then my family is secure. This is especially important that a lot of people are buying term insurances, which are risk covers online. And what they don't realize is that in case of online policies, there is nobody there to fight for them. And life insurance claim happens when you are dead. So you are not there to fight for what you have said. And you don't have an agent or a broker or a professional organization to help your family with the claim. So in that sense, this type of protection will be tremendously important.
Sanjeev, for a long time now, the industry has been batting for a separate limit for insurance. Of course, we do understand that the government could increase exemption limits, and of that, a fixed amount would only be for insurance and pension products. But according to you, what should be this limit, and to what extent could this potentially improve penetration?
So I think it is very, very essential that the limits of 1 lakh, which were set about 15-20 years ago, now it's time that these limits have been increased to 1.5 lakhs, but that is not enough. If you look at last 15 years, this limit right now should be in the range of, according to me, 3 to 4 lakhs. And out of which 1.5 lakh rupees or type of limit needs to be assigned only to insurance. One, that a person must provide social security to his family. At the same time, it provides 10-year plus funds to the economy, 10 to 30, 40-year funds, which are very essential for infrastructure and other development. So I think it's a leap of faith. I would request the government to take this leap of faith, because salaries have gone up tremendously, and these 1.5 limits get covered in PPF and your school's fees, so nobody is actually investing.
Also, another important aspect is the health insurance premium under Section 1010D. Currently, the limits are 15,000 and 20,000 for senior citizens. But clearly, this is not enough given the rising cost of healthcare. How much should this be increased in your view?
15,000 is actually, barely covers even a 3 to 5 lakh rupee cover, and the kind of inflation that is happening. And this I'm talking about a person who's under 50. So, this amount needs to go up to at least 25 to 30,000 rupees. And for a senior citizen, this needs to be in the range of about 30 to 50,000 rupees. But if you look at a corporate side today, they can pay any amount of premium for their employees, and that's allowed as an expense. Whereas an individual is restricted to buying a policy only up to 15,000, or senior citizen benefits slightly higher. So which is not enough.
The industry also wants service tax of 12.36% on life and health products to be removed. But what impact would this have in terms of costs for the policyholders?
See, this 12.36 is a substantial amount of money. So at the end of the day today, if you are buying a policy worth 30,000 rupees, you are ending up paying 4,000 rupees tax on that service. Whereas, that 30,000 rupee has a lot of components. So, about 40 to 50% of your tax benefit, even if you are claiming, is actually going away, in this. And 12.36%, service tax is quite high. So I truly believe that there needs to be a differential rate. And when it comes to life insurance, it needs to be even lower, because life insurance is more of an investment. And the whole criticism that media does, the government does, the regulator does for bringing in all the changes is that the returns in life insurance are not insufficient. But if you put such prohibitive service tax requirements on an investment, then it's not fair. And if you compare it, like it has been said a lot of times that ULIPs and mutual funds are very similar. So your mutual funds don't carry any service tax. So why should a life insurance carry service tax?
All right, Sanjeev. Many thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Bye.
Time for a short break, but we'll tell you how you can transfer money on Facebook when we return. To talk about this, Deepak Sharma, Executive Vice President Digital Initiatives at Kotak Mahindra Bank, joins us. Deepak, thanks very much for joining us. Can you take us through how the KPay platform really works?
So KPay, as you would know, it's the first of its kind bank transfer platform which enables over 225 million bank account users in India to make a real-time fund transfer. Primarily, it has two legs. One is the user has to come and register first time on the KPay platform. Currently, we have enabled this sign-on through Facebook. As you would know that India is the second largest Facebook market globally, and we have over 100 million users on Facebook. So what we have combined is 28 different bank account users, combining about 225 million of those.
Right.
Through Facebook can sign on. You can just click and send them an amount up to 2,500 rupee. And once they get this message where they need to click and they have to register once on the KPay to claim this money.
But from a user point of view, I think the first thing would be security in such transactions. Can you take us through the security measures that are in place?
Yeah, so as bank, we always believe that security is paramount when we are talking about anything to do with money or financial transactions. We still ensure there is a two-factor authentication that is in place. We have brought in the same level of security even in KPay. So whenever you have to transfer amount, the first factor, while is a social credential that we have allowed a Facebook-based login and password, but the second factor of authentication continues to be a dynamic authentication. That means that you will get a one-time password on your phone, and unless you use that password, you will not be able to complete this transaction. So just like a OTP-based transaction that we enable, so in this case, even if say somebody has hacked a Facebook credential and manages to log into KPay, one will not be able to complete this transaction because the second factor obviously will always be the mobile number that is registered with your bank account, and that's where you will get OTP to complete this transaction.
Is there any kind of a limit on the amount of money that you can transfer?
So when we looked at this entire thing, we have put obviously a limit, which is about 2,500 rupee per transaction and maximum of 25,000 rupee for a month, because we believe that KPay is something which replaces cash as a part of a social payment tool.
Can you transfer to somebody who's not on your friends list? The reason I'm asking this is that one could have business associates who are not on the friends list, but might want to transfer money to them through Facebook without adding them. Is that possible or would be possible in the near future?
Yeah, I think that's the way we would like to build this product. As I said, right now it was done for a peer-to-peer, but we understand there is a need for small payments either for merchants or vendors. And going forward, I'm sure we are going to create more use cases around KPay.
How much traction have you seen so far, and how do you expect transaction volumes to pick up via this platform going forward?
I think we have been pretty surprised and delighted with the kind of adoption that we have seen on KPay. Because we always believe that the social products are more viral and true to what we wanted to launch this product in a very social and viral manner. And as you rightly said, the product has been launched recently, but we have seen a very rapid traction to the extent I can say we have about close to 15,000 people who have logged in and have initiated or registered on KPay.
Currently, there's no cost attached to the service, but is it possible that this could become chargeable once it gains more traction?
Should we realize that there are areas where customers are willing to pay for a service, not necessarily for the same kind, but maybe as we add and build more services on KPay, we may look at monetizing it.
So what's the cost that the bank incurs for providing these services?
So as I said, our intent here was to create a bank agnostic payment platform. And I understand there is a cost associated with it. As of now, we are absorbing that cost for a transaction.
You've also launched hashtag banking services through Kotak Jiffy. So as I understand, one can do a whole host of things with just a hashtag, basically a social banking account that one has to register for.
Yes, so Jiffy was the first of its kind product which was launched anywhere in the world, I was told. Which integrates Twitter with banking, and so this was the first of its kind experiment, and we realized that 25% or more than that customers who have signed on Jiffy chose to link their Twitter handle with Jiffy account. We have launched 23 different services now, what we call hashtag banking, where there are 21 different kind of non-financial transactions that can be done by just sending a hashtag, which again works in a completely secured manner, because these hashtag banking, everything works as a direct message. That means that whatever tweet is sent by a customer to the bank, it's not visible to anyone.
So funds transfer is not yet possible on Twitter, right?
Yes, right now we haven't kept fund transfer. We have only the mobile recharge and DTH recharge. Apart from all the banking transactions like your mini statement, balance inquiry, request for a checkbook, get to know your credit card transactions. So these are the kind of non-financial transactions that we have enabled on Twitter.
Any likelihood of launching funds transfer on Twitter as well?
If I think our customers are ready to transact and do more on such platform, we'll be more than delighted to provide such service in a secured manner.
All right. Thanks, Deepak, very much for joining us.
Pleasure.
Time for another break. When we return, we'll decode the Birla Sun Life Manufacturing Equity Fund. Welcome back. The Modi-led government's Make in India campaign aims to increase the share of manufacturing in India's GDP from 16% to 25% by 2022. This has inspired mutual funds to launch schemes to benefit from this initiative. Birla Sun Life has launched an open-ended manufacturing equity fund that will invest specifically in manufacturing companies. But is this fund suitable for your portfolio? Shrikant Meenakshi, co-founder and chief operating officer at fundsindia.com, joins us to help demystify this product. Thanks, Shrikant, for joining us. My first question to you is that the Birla Sun Life Manufacturing Equity Fund is banking on the Make in India push of the Modi government. Before we get into specifics of that fund, do you overall believe in this investment philosophy?
India is moving towards or in the process of having an economic recovery. And what happens in an economic recovery, even without such a campaign, is manufacturing sector companies get re-rated because, you know, demand goes higher, their capex, the capex goes higher, and capacity utilization becomes higher, and so on. And of course, there is a Make in India campaign, active campaign that is being pursued by the government also. So the combination of these two has a pretty decent chance of working, and this theme at this point of time is a pretty interesting theme to go to the market with.
So given that this focus on manufacturing is not something that is likely to yield immediate results, one should invest in this fund only with a long-term horizon?
Specifically for this fund, you could say that the performance of the stocks will start showing only after earnings start reflecting the underlying economic recovery and the Make in India theme, Make in India campaign success, and so on.
There are as many as 22 different sectors, including defensive like pharma and also metals, auto, etc., that this fund will invest in. So that would really give the fund manager a lot of leeway, and I would think that portfolio construction for the fund manager might actually become that much more challenging.
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very good point. Portfolio construction and stock selection will be critical for the success of this particular fund. 22 different sectors. I mean, there are 22 different sectors in the manufacturing segment itself, and practically that makes it a kind of a diversified fund in itself. And beyond that, even they have a 20% leeway in terms of being able to go outside the ambit of this manufacturing segment and invest in allied segments as well, allied sectors as well. So there's a lot of leeway for the fund manager to manage this fund, and this one could even say, you know, this is a fairly diversified fund with a thematic focus.
So what are the potential risks, in your opinion, for an investor that one should be aware of before investing in a new fund such as this one?
Well, like all new funds, we don't have any track record for evaluating the performance of a fund manager and evaluating how this fund is going to do in the future. So that is an inherent risk in any new fund offer that an investor considers. And along with it, like I said, there are certain sectors that are going to be out of bounds, so to say, for the fund manager of this fund, like the IT sector, which could do very well in the upcoming years. But that is something that this fund is not going to be able to take an exposure to. Also, banking and financial sector, that is also kind of outside the ambit of this particular fund.
If an investor believes in this investment philosophy and is keen to have a manufacturing specific fund in his portfolio, would you recommend a thematic fund or this kind of a diversified manufacturing equity fund?
Well, it's a spectrum, right? I mean, you have very focused thematic funds like, IT funds, FMCG funds and pharma funds and all that stuff, or practically sector funds, so to say. And then you have these thematic funds which are more diversified, but still cannot call itself totally diversified. For a regular retail long-term investor who is just coming into mutual funds or something like that, we'd any day recommend diversified funds.
The NFO did quite well, mopped up close to around 800 crores. So this, of course, is a high-risk investment. But do you think the upside could also be substantial?
Well, that's a very interesting question because, we went and looked at some numbers when this NFO came out and looked at the performance of the manufacturing segment in the BSE S&P 500 index. And what we found was positively surprising in the sense that if you look at the 3-year, 5-year, 10-year period, the manufacturing segment has outperformed the broad index. Yes, guardedly optimistic that the upside is there for such a fund to tap into.
I understand you don't have a recommendation on this fund, Shrikant, since it has no track record. But in your view, where should this fit into one's portfolio?
For an investor who is tracking the political, economic climate of this country, who is tracking sectors in the economy and feels positive that this Make in India campaign is going to do well, or the underlying economic recovery story is going to really play out well, for people who think that these things are going to happen and want to be part of these up moves in the market, so to say, definitely a small exposure to this fund, like say 5 to 10% of their portfolio exposure to this fund will definitely whet their appetite in terms of making sure that they don't miss the boat. For others, they'd probably be better off going to diversified equity funds that nevertheless takes a healthy exposure to the manufacturing segment.
Thanks, Shrikant, very much for joining us on the show.
Thank you very much.
With that, it's a wrap on this episode of Wealth Manager. We'll be back next week with a brand new set of investment ideas. Until then, if you have any queries or comments, do write into us on wealthmanager@bloombergtvindia.com. For all the episodes of Wealth Manager and expert opinions, log on to btvin.com/wealthmanager. Thanks for watching.